Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On tonight's show, I have a South African talking about land rights in current modern-day South Africa. His name is Willem Petzer. Recently, incendiary statements have been made by politicians in South Africa stating that there will be expropriation of land without proper payment. Article 25 of the South African Constitution clearly states that property may only be expropriated in terms of law of general application for a public purpose or in the public interest or subject to compensation, the amount of which and the time and manner of payment which have either been agreed to by those affected or decided or approved by a court. Before I get to the discussion I had with Willem Petzer, I included about 10 minutes of audio between two people discussing the issue of land expropriation without compensation. The first person is Ernst Roots, and the person who believes that there should be expropriation without compensation is Dr. Azariah Mahad. Thank you. Enjoy the show.
Welcome back. Well, big changes are afoot. Currently, there are no provisions for the expropriation of land without compensation. Section 25 of the Constitution states just and equitable compensation must be paid in the event of expropriation. So how will expropriation without compensation work? And how will lawmakers balance these competing needs? Well, I'm joined here in the studio by AfriForum's Ernst Roots and the PAC's Dr. Azariah Mahad. Thanks to both of you gentlemen for coming through. If I may start with you, Mr. Roots. You obviously don't believe that there should be expropriation without compensation, or is it everything?
No, well, obviously we don't believe that there should be expropriation without compensation.
But you do believe that there should be expropriation?
No, we believe there can be restitution. We believe that we must differentiate between restitution and redistribution. And restitution is to say that we must go and look at particular areas and say if a particular piece of land was taken from a particular community, then that land should be given back, and that's why there's a land claims process. But on the other hand, restitution and redistribution are not the same thing. Redistribution is simply to say if you are white and you own land, we're going to take that from you. And that's what this policy is about, and that's what we are against.
Is that how you read it?
Yeah, well, I think that's very clearly what it's about. We heard in Parliament the way it was argued was with statements such as white people are criminals and white people stole the land and so forth. And I think our history is much more complex than simply making generalized statements like that.
Dr. Mahad, do you believe that there should be a land expropriation without compensation?
Yes, for one very simple reason, as Mr. Root says, we've got a very complicated history in this country. It has been a history of wars, and wars were done for dispossession of our own people. That is why you call yourself an Afrikaner, an African of European extraction. And I call myself an African of an African extraction. Mm. We have a history in this country of oppression. I was part of the oppressed, you were part of the oppressor. We had our seminal movement in this country in 1994, where we agreed on a way forward, and a way forward was to govern together in a common good of our own people. We did that. But the issue of our own struggle was a question of land that was taken from our own people. So the only way for many of us is that our land is supposed to come back to ourselves. So expropriation for us is very appropriate without compensation.
How do we address that past? Fact of the matter is that there were wars, and lots of laws were enacted over the years, over the decades, to actually essentially entrench a system where black people in this country could not really own land. How do we address that?
Well, I think we need to be historically accurate. We need to make sure that when we look at history, we determine what actually happened in which areas, other than making blanket statements. The argument, and perhaps Doctor can explain that to me, but I haven't heard an argument in favor of expropriation without compensation, or a person arguing that who's also able to explain to me what can I, as a white person, do to own property legally without having a threat that or without being called a land thief? What should a white person do to own property?
You want to answer that, though?
Let me answer that. You see, there is this insinuation that whatever we do as African people will be very disorderly. We conducted our struggle as an oppressed people. There were very few incidences where people were just killed randomly. There were very few incidences where people were trapped in the streets. We went to negotiations. Some of us, under the leadership of some of very respectable judges like the Khamu Senekers, we hold hostages in the PAC conferences where we say, in this land, we're going to take it. And we made a compromise. We let the negotiations went on, and negotiations went on. But my point is very simple, my brother. We have agreed as African people. Last time I was here, I said South Africans have agreed that land must go back to its original owners. As to how the modalities will be, I do not have a monopoly on that wisdom. I also agree you don't have a monopoly on that wisdom. The ANC has got no monopoly on that wisdom. The EFF has got no monopoly on that wisdom.
But would you try to...
That is why exactly there's a committee that has been set to look at the modalities of how that is going to be done. That is our way that we've conducted our struggle, and I think we'll continue doing that in terms of negotiating.
But I would really like to hear an answer as to what can a white person do to own property without that white person being accused of being a criminal. Is that possible?
Should you not accept that historical wrongs have to be corrected?
Yeah, I think...
And if you do, then are you not prepared to get to sit in a room with other people who may have a completely different perspective from yours, but discuss what he calls the modalities?
That's exactly what I think needs to happen. I think historical wrongs need to be corrected, and I think we need to be able to sit in a room and have these discussions. But it's hard to have a discussion like this when the one side of the argument is, if you are white, then you are a criminal. And we do know that we can go through the Natives Land Act and all of these acts and why they were wrong and so forth. But what is not said is that at the time of the Natives Land Act, black people occupied 9% of the surface of South Africa. The argument that's being put forward today is black people own 100% of the surface, and any land that's owned by any white person was taken through means of conquest or dispossession or forced removals. I mean, that's simply not true. That's factually incorrect.
But why don't you answer the very same contrary thing? How did white people occupy land in this country?
Well, I can answer that question for you. They were... I can answer that.
No, I'm saying.
Let's let him answer the question.
All right. There was a wide variety of ways in which white people occupied land in South Africa. We must remember the Great Track happened shortly after the Mafekane, shortly after that the massive Xhosa suicide where 10 or 20,000 people died. And there were parts of South Africa that were empty, and I'm not saying the entire country was empty. I'm not saying that. There were parts of South Africa that were empty, and there were many incidents, it's proven, the document still exists, of negotiations for land between white tribes and black tribes. There were many such incidents. The well-known case is the case of Piet Retief and Chief Ngan, but there were many others. You can look at the Swaziland border. You will see to the left, to the bottom side, there's a little gap in the border. The reason why there's a gap in that border was because there was negotiations between Voortrekker people and the Swazis who agreed to give that land to them. But despite these negotiations, despite these cases where land was also bought, the accusation is if you're white and you own land, it was stolen. That's just historically incorrect.
Well, before he answers, let's for a second say, take your version for a second of events. Are you saying those empty spots did not belong to anybody? The empty parts of the country you're talking about, they belong to nobody?
Well, I think that's an important question, because that's where the disagreement comes in. Is how do you define ownership? And we know that there's a difference between what white people's perception of ownership was when they came to South Africa and what black people's perception of ownership is. We do know that. And part of the problem here, or the disagreement, is, and I'm paraphrasing, but there was an argument that if, for example, black tribes, if they grazed their cattle over a piece of land, then that was their land. And the other side of the argument is it's not that simple to say if you walked over a piece of land and you lived 100 kilometers from there, then that's your land. So the issue about how do you define land ownership is actually a very complicated issue. It's not, once again, strengthening the point that it's not that simple to say if you're white and you own land, you're a criminal.
Surely you disagree with that, his version?
Absolutely, absolutely, and I don't want to go into those particular details. Through you, I want to speak to the consciousness of the Afrikaner people in this country. Their consciousness in the sense that there's an opportunity where the oppressed and oppressed, the former oppressed and oppressor, must sit down and basically say that given whatever different versions of history, knowing that we know that there is an agreement in terms of history, that is an African land that we're sitting on. An African land owned less part of that particular land. How do we move forward? How do you see yourself when you move around in our own townships? You found 10 shacks behind a house, and we stay in suburbs. We've got a lavish houses and all that. What does that say to you as a human being? And this is all that we are basically saying. It cannot continue to be the same situation as is. We need to move on to create this country. Because now when we say land expropriation, you go out and say to your own investors, you go outside and say, no, South Africa is going to be like Zimbabwe. And we're fully aware that what happened in Zimbabwe was a warning to South Africa. You dare not go on a question of land. But I am saying we are going to go on that particular question of land because we are going to build a consensus in this country in terms of how that is going to be done. And I'm sure AfriForum is going to be part and parcel of that because this is our land, all of us together, and we need to move forward.
Yeah, but I'm sure if you consider the fact that, I mean, in 1990 or thereabout, people thought we were miles apart. But a few years later, by and large, South Africans were able to find one another.
Yes, I think there was a Rainbow Nation bubble-us at some stage, but I'm still waiting for the answer as to what a white person can do to own property. And if you're not answering that question, I assume your position is if you're white, you cannot legally own property.
Okay, let's say your question is not answered right now. But why do you object to getting or starting or being part of a process that will hopefully make us find one another?
Yeah, well, we're not against being part of a process, we're not against starting a process, but we disagree with the content of the current process. I think there's a lot that can be done, and there are some radical things that the South African government can do right now that would make a big impact.
Like
the fact that 25% of people in this country live on state-owned land, and it's mostly black people, the black people that you spoke of, and more than 50% of them complain about the quality of that housing. A radical step could be to say, let's give title deeds to those people, because then that property...
But that has been happening in the townships.
No, that's not been happening. No. Well, if that's been happening, it's on a very, very minor scale, and that's the exact opposite to what the ANC proposes. The goal is to have the state own everything. That's what this is about.
Few seconds. 10 seconds from you, Doc.
There is basically no process that has been agreed on. A way forward must be created as to how we're going to go on as a society to do that. I have my own view. The EFF has got its own views. The ANC has got its own views. You've got your own views. You are advocating for protection of white interests.
No, I'm advocating for protection of property rights.
Okay, that's where we're going to leave it, unfortunately.
Perhaps you can talk a little bit about your background and also contact information. Then we can just kind of go into what we discussed in, I briefly covered in our Twitter conversation. South Africa history, difference between the settlers and the English, and currently what's going on in South Africa in general, specifically in your part of the country. What part of South Africa are you in?
All right. Do you want me to start with the history also? Do you think that's a good place to start?
Americans have a very, I would say, for me in particular, have a kind of general history of South Africa. We don't understand the different times that, kind of Europeans were there and the different type of tribal, regions that are in that area. So maybe you can just do a general history, maybe your family background too. Talk a little bit about yourself.
All right, so the first Dutch people that came to South Africa, it was actually a shipwreck here in Table Bay or the Cape of Storms in 1644. And the Dutch colony in South Africa was never really a colony as the other ones that were state-sponsored. The Dutch colony was sponsored by the Dutch East Indian Company that wanted to set up a trading post here so they can supply their ships.
Right. So they were all going to, Indonesia or something like that.
Yes. They were mostly going to India to trade spices.
Okay.
So, sorry. Uh, After they stranded here in 1644, they found out it was an excellent place to set up a harbor. So the company imported some in 1652, brought some specialist farmers here to farm so that the ship can stop at South Africa and resupply on its way to India.
Okay.
And that's how the Dutch colony started here. And then later, the French Huguenots fled because of the religious persecution in France. They came to South Africa to join the Dutch because the Dutch had the same Reformed faith that the French had, that were persecuted by the government, the Catholic Church.
Right.
So,
Protestants.
sorry?
They're both Protestants.
Yeah, Reformed Protestants.
Okay, sorry, continue. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay, so later in the 1700s or the 18th century, the British came here and they wanted to annex the colony. So there was a lot of fighting and they brought a lot of German mercenaries to fight, but in the end, the English lost the fight and the Cape became Dutch again, and all those German mercenaries that they brought stayed there. They also became farmers, part of the Dutch colony, and only a lot later, around the end of the 18th century, the British came again with more mercenaries, and they took over the colony again, and this time they were successful. So then the Dutch and the Germans that were mercenaries brought here by the English got tired of the British rule, because the British imposed a lot of taxes on them and their products and so on. So they decided they don't want these taxes.
It sounds like the American colonial era.
Exactly the same. It's the exact same reason as well. They felt oppressed because of all the taxes. So then they decided to move out of the Cape Province and start their own country, which later became the Boer republics of Transvaal and Natalia and Vryheid and Stellaland and the Orange Free State. Those are the Boer republics they formed. All these republics later.
Sorry, just to let the listener know. Basically, these people who had been there all went northeast, kind of up, and the Transvaal means they're going past the Vaal River. So
Exactly.
Sorry to interrupt.
And that was the exact same time they came into contact with the Bantu tribes. Before that, like in the Cape Colony, they were never in contact with black tribes, because the indigenous tribe there is called the Khoi. But they basically extinct now, because they were later hunted down and genocided by the Zulus. The Zulus came here in 1816. That's when they established their kingdom here in South Africa. So that's quite something if you look at the dates. 1652, which the Dutch came here, versus 1816 when the Zulus came here. You can see who was in this land first and whose land it actually is.
Okay.
And I know a very good historian. His name is Dan Ruet. You can also follow him on Twitter. He's quite active on there. He documented that during the time of apartheid, that was in the 1900s, in the 20th century, there was only about 1 million blacks in South Africa, but a lot of black people from all over Africa immigrated here up until the 50 million we have now. So even though they were saying, they were always talking about how oppressive the apartheid system is, they voted with their feet. All these immigrants came here, millions and millions and millions of them, and now they are the ones causing the trouble. They are the ones that want to get the land back, even though it's historically proven that they never owned any land here in South Africa.
Interesting.
They only immigrated here in the last 100 years or 200 years.
And that immigration is still happening into South Africa as an economic engine. There's more recent African, like different people who had never been in South Africa before, like Nigerians, other parts of the country. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a lot of immigration still today, but not as much as there was back in the day of apartheid. Because if you look at our black jobless percentage, it's over 40% now. Over 40% of black people are jobless at this moment, and that's why it's not as economically viable for them to migrate to South Africa anymore, like they did for the past 100 to 150 years. So all these North Africans now mostly migrate to Europe and not to South Africa anymore.
I see. So that explains that pressure. Then, so the Boer, I mean, the settlers who moved northeast, there were two wars against the British Empire in the 19th century, right? Two recurrent wars but the British really had their eye on South Africa because they found the mineral, the gold and the diamonds, right? So that created a more
yeah, that was only much later. That was actually at the end of the 19th century to the beginning of the 20th century. The war only ended in let's say 1912, when the Union of South Africa was established, and the British basically gave power to the Boer generals Jan Smuts and Louis Botha. They told them, now you guys are in charge of the whole South Africa, but you become part of the Commonwealth. Gotcha. So yeah, and then only in 1962, the Boer people decided they don't want to be part of the Commonwealth anymore. They actually want to be a fully independent republic. So that's when we had our unilateral Declaration of Independence in 1962. But yeah, after the takeover of the communists in 1994, for some reason they were immediately taken back into the Commonwealth. So now we are in the Commonwealth again.
Didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah.
And I mean, the communists, I mean, have grown in power there. I mean, you can see some of these newer leaders there, Julius Malema. They all were all red, right? So they're just.
Yeah, the ANC is actually in a coalition government with the South African Communist Party. Gotcha. So yeah, they have always been communist, and they've always had ties with the communists all over the world, in America and especially in Britain.
Right.
That's where they got all their funding from.
Right, and it wasn't. I was blanking on the name. What was the guy's name? He was a communist too. He became the first president after.
Yes, Mandela.
Nelson Mandela. A lot of people don't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a communist. You can actually, if you go Google Mandela communist, you can find pictures of him with well-known communists like Fidel Castro is one of his biggest allies, and you also find pictures of him with George Soros and Dennis Goldberg and all these guys that are known to sponsor communists worldwide.
Right.
And they still do.
Well, he went to jail. Mandela went to jail for insurrection. He was bombing places, if I remember correctly. I don't know the exact. I think he wasn't. I mean, he became this kind of poster boy for the anti-apartheid movement, but his early history was violent revolution. Would you agree with that?
Yes, definitely, but it wasn't really a violent revolution against the white government, because I think he knew that if he wanted to pick a fight with the white government, he would have been destroyed. So most of the fights and most of the executions were in the black parts, because most of the black people in that time did not support the Communist Party and the ANC. So the only way they could force those black people to support the ANC and the Communist Party was by violent force. So about 20,000 people were killed under command of Nelson Mandela, and about most of them were black. Only about 600 of the victims were white, but the other 20,000 were all black.
Fascinating. You know, those are facts that get left out in our media. You know, the sympathetic media here in the States, I would say, always promoted this image of Mandela as this kind of grandfatherly, you know, hero, kind of like Abraham Lincoln of the South Africa. So, you know, we don't hear about.
That was basically mostly George Soros and the Open Society Foundation that started bombarding the media with that image of Mandela, which was actually laughable because we all knew that wasn't true. But nowadays, if you look at the world, if you look at the international community, that's the image they have of him.
Right. Interesting. So we go from Mandela, the power shifts from the anti-apartheid. And it's interesting too, because right as that the apartheid left, there was, immense wealth in South Africa, and different people came into power. They're talking about current day land reform, like literally taking land from current owners. But there was land reform after apartheid ended. Wasn't that correct?
Yeah, there's an ongoing process of land reform but it's actually with compensation. So they buy the farms from the farmers and then they give it to black people. But actually, the statistics say more than 90% of those black people that then get the farms sell it back to the original owner within a year, and then they basically just take all that. It can be more than $1 million, which they then just get for themselves. So most of them are just in it for the money. They don't want the land; they just want the money.
Fascinating. So that this kind of switching of ownership has been happening for. When was it? Is there a specific date in South Africa when apartheid ended?
1990, yes.
So would you say that this kind of land switching and gaming the system by owners of these guys, has that been happening for 25 years?
It's been happening since 1996, so it's been happening for 22 years now.
Gotcha. And the expenditures on land reform by the government of South Africa are in the hundreds of millions of dollars, right? There's huge expenditures to try to redistribute the land in a capitalist system, right? So the government purchases the land, right? But I thought I read a statistic that it was billions of dollars have been spent on this kind of thing. Is that true?
Yes, it's more than $1 billion nowadays. AfriForum, one of the civil rights organizations here in South Africa, they calculated that if all the money that has been spent on land reform was just spent to buy up the land, the government could have bought all the farms and all the real estate in South Africa 1.6 times.
Wow, that's incredible.
So we don't know where all of that money went, but all we do know, it all went into corruption and into the pockets of the top dogs of the ANC and the South African Communist Party.
Well, can you talk about the current corruption in South Africa?
Yes, corruption is extremely common in the government. Millions or actually billions of dollars get stolen every year. It's more than $1 billion American dollars, which is quite funny because more money gets stolen via corruption than the international foreign aid that South Africa receives. So one can almost say that they steal all of the foreign aid that South Africa receives, plus some of the taxpayers' money as well.
Interesting. So I'm assuming that money is taken away and not put into public programs, road building, etc.
Not at all, because the United States actually sponsored $350 million last year to South Africa, which was supposed to go into health programs for people with sicknesses like tuberculosis and HIV/AIDS and so on, and none of that money went into any health programs. It all just disappeared.
Fascinating. Is HIV still a major concern in South Africa? HIV/AIDS?
Quite so, yeah. They passed a law in South Africa where nobody is allowed to speak about HIV, the HIV status of anyone else. So it's not allowed to know. You are not allowed to know if someone's got AIDS. That's quite a stupid law. So the official numbers are not. There are no official numbers, only guesses, and the guesses are that it's around 20% of the population. But many people who actually look at the available statistics and calculate them say that the HIV number could actually be higher. It could be closer to 40%. I know the neighboring nation of Swaziland is almost 50% HIV/AIDS because they still keep those statistics.
That's remarkable. They had a law here in California where it's no longer a felony to expose somebody to the HIV virus, which is pretty remarkable.
That was never a felony in Africa.
It's not a felony, or it is?
It was never.
Never. Wow, remarkable.
There's actually some articles that you can go read. Even like the most liberal newspapers like The Guardian and those have reported on it. So around around about 1 in 3 men in South Africa are admitting that they practice rape, and there's this massive what do you call it in English, um, superstition amongst the Africans that if they have sex with a virgin, they will be cured from HIV/AIDS. So these people then rape little girls, which they are sure are virgins that never had puberty yet. So they rape them because they think that they can uh, that they will be cured from AIDS. And now statistically, it's more common for a little girl to be raped before she learned to read than the other way around.
That's terrifying. That's terrible. It's interesting you brought that up. That's part of the Muti kind of witchcraft belief there. I came across another South African by the name of Cobus Jonker. Have you ever heard of Cobus Jonker?
No, I didn't.
He was a witchcraft. He was a policeman, I believe, in Johannesburg, who they actually had their own. They had so much witchcraft happening in South Africa that the police there created their own department, and he was the head.
Yeah,
of
but that was only during apartheid. They took that away now.
Gotcha.
And that same department actually also looked at cannibalism, which was also big here in South Africa. And when they took that away, cannibalism started to pick up again. So you can also Google that, cannibalism in South Africa. You'll get a lot of articles because now that's becoming a trend here in South Africa again amongst the black tribes.
Remarkable. So since apartheid ended, would you say that the country is kind of on a downward spiral? I mean, we can bring all the things we've talked about the past up to the present day, where something like 60 to 70,000 people have been murdered in the last 15 years. There's been raids on farms in South Africa. And just recently, one of the reasons that I wanted to talk with somebody from South Africa was the statement by Julius Malema about how the redistribution of wealth there will be taking place by force. So, would you say, what are your positions of the future there?
Well, the murders is an ongoing thing. This one woman called Sunette Bridges actually compiled a list of all the white people that were murdered by black people, and that came to 70,000 in 2013. But she stopped doing that. Then these other people took it over. Miljoen vir Steve, they call themselves, and they put that number at 85,000 right now. But it's impossible to get these statistics or to verify these statistics because the government passed a law that's made it illegal to put race in the statistics of crime. They passed that law in 2008, and then since 2008. There was no race in the statistics, only numbers.
Okay. And I mean, this is still. I mean, in some of the videos and some of the pictures that I've seen, it looks like it's like there's a Mad Max world there in South Africa where you leave your house. It's a roll of the dice.
It is actually. I mean, I posted on Twitter one day. A few photos of my own house and the security that I have here, and I actually made a joke about this American movie called The Purge, and then I said they've got nothing on us there. Like in that movie, they install these massive security measures so that nobody can come into their houses, and then our houses actually have more security than those houses have in that dystopian apocalyptical world in that movie.
Yeah, it's remarkable. I mean, what are the laws on gun ownership over South Africa and in your region particularly?
It's extremely difficult to get a gun. Sorry. In 2000, they passed these new gun control laws, which basically gave the state all the power to decide whether you're allowed to have a firearm or not. And then all the people had to hand in their firearms. And then nowadays, it's so difficult to get a firearm. I mean, I know of people that have waited 2-3 years for their license to get, for them to get a license approved by the state, because it takes so long to get that license. And then many of the times, the state just rejects the license for no reason at all. I mean, I've got friends who applied for a license 3 times now and got rejected all 3 times. And these friends of mine have never even had anything against them, no criminal record, not even a parking fine or a speeding ticket. So yeah, that's basically what's gun controls now in South Africa.
That's a shame. I mean, at some point there was. I mean, I assume that the kind of pioneers all had guns. Well, I mean, it kind of was like the American Wild West or the Western thing, like all guns and all kinds of handmade weaponry. Why did that kind of gun ownership? How did that? I mean, is that something that happened at the end of apartheid, that it was taken away from people, or the rifles were taken away, or?
Yes, that's what I just said. Is in 2000, in the year 2000, they passed these new gun control laws, and everyone had to hand in their firearms or apply for new licenses. So yeah, now it's extremely difficult to get that license approved. It's a bureaucratic nightmare.
Gotcha. And so the current leadership is Ramaphosa. Is that correct?
Ramaphosa.
So Ramaphosa's also said made some incendiary statements. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, he's actually the guy that declared that land expropriation without any compensation will start to take place in the near future. They're going to try and amend the constitution. That's basically the worst thing he said.
Gotcha. And among other things that may have not hit the international media. How long has he been? He's the prime minister, right?
Yes, he's the president.
And how long has he been in power?
Just 2 months now.
Gotcha. So now, wasn't there agreements at the end of apartheid that stated, or there were something about that there would be no land expropriation, or that there would be no removal of people from land? Does that sound familiar?
Yes, in the constitution it actually says that everybody has a right to property ownership, and nobody can take it away from them. And that's actually the part of the constitution that they want to change and make it so that they can take it away.
I see. So what's the kind of general consensus opinion of many of the Boers or people, where around where you live? What does the future hold?
Well, we don't know. We're trying to protect ourselves, but it's very difficult because we're not allowed to form like the commando system or the militias that we had. So that's very difficult for us. The gun ownership thing is also very difficult, but we still try to form organized neighborhood watches and farm watches and so on, where we help each other out to protect ourselves.
Wow. And it's the farming system is spread out through most of South Africa. It's not condensed in one specific area. Is that true?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Well, I'm just saying, like, the farming system in South Africa, it's not like it's not just around Johannesburg. It runs all the way from Cape Town to Johannesburg. It's not.
Oh yes, the farming system in South Africa is countrywide. It's from Cape Town to Johannesburg, north of Johannesburg, west of Johannesburg, east of Johannesburg, everywhere. Like the whole country is full of farms.
Gotcha. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like here in California, the farms are all in the Central Valley. I mean, there's some spread out, but are people talking about what happened in Zimbabwe as an example of the potential future?
Exactly. A lot of people, especially economists, say South Africa's future is going to be the same as Zimbabwe. It's interesting that you say that because I've got a lot of knowledge on agriculture, and in Zimbabwe, it's one of the easiest countries in the world to farm. I mean, they've got the most fertile soil of anywhere in the world. They've got very high rainfall. They've got a high water table, all of those conditions that make it excellent for farming, yet they still failed miserably when they took the farms away from the European farmers. And here in South Africa, it's the complete opposite. It's very, very, very difficult to farm in South Africa because we have most of the country is semi-desert, and we have very low rainfall. We have a very low water table. It's very difficult to farm here. That's why we think there were no Bantu tribes here when we came here, because it was impossible for them to farm here. And if it was so difficult for Zimbabwe to start farming on their own in that great conditions for farming, I don't even know what's going to happen in South Africa, where it's actually very difficult to farm.
I mean, one of the examples of Zimbabwe is they took these viable working farms and gave it to people without the specific knowledge or understanding, and then they bungled it, in addition to many other things. And my understanding is that they're actually trying to invite the people who they disowned from the land back to farm again. Is that true?
We don't really know if it's true or not. It's very unpredictable, that president they've got there.
Gotcha. I think Mugabe's no longer there, right?
Yeah, Mugabe's not there. It's this new president they've got. I forgot what his name was, but he said he wants to give it back to white farmers, and then later he retracted that statement again, and so on. But yeah, that whole country is a mess now. I mean, I've posted tweets about this, video and photo evidence. They actually eat rats, and they sell rats on the street to eat, because that's the only meat that they've got left in that country.
Remarkable. And then what's the population of Zimbabwe? 25 mil? I wonder what that is.
Yeah, it will be closer to 20 mil. I mean, most of the immigrants, most of them immigrated out of the country.
Oh, remarkable. Yeah, it's 16 million right now. So
yeah, so it became a lot less. I think it was, I don't know. It's about 16.1 mil. I would guess around about now.
Now, do you, as far as people leaving the country, is there a proportion of the settler population, the former settler population, that wants to travel, to go somewhere else to immigrate?
Generally, the ones that didn't immigrate yet is here to stay. Sorry, in South Africa, there's about 1 million Afrikaner. That's what we call ourselves, our people. There's about 1 million Afrikaners overseas, mostly in Australia and New Zealand, but also in Europe and America. There's a lot.
Yes, there's actually there were many au pairs who were Afrikaner. I knew people from Durban 25 years ago. So you got. I mean, the outsiders called you Boers, which is like a farmer term, right? But internally, it's Afrikaan. You speak Afrikaans.
No, we also call ourselves Boere, or Boers, like you say.
Oh, so you do. Okay, so that's correct.
Yeah, it's just another name. It's like Holland and Netherlands. It's the same, two names for the same thing.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's amazing. So the population roughly of the Afrikaner Boers is about 5 million, and then you have like almost 20% of your population is overseas.
Yeah. Closer to 25% of them.
Yeah, we have one. I think we have one. Elon Musk. I don't know if he was in Africa. I think he's an Afrikaner, right?
Yeah, he actually went to the same high school that I did.
Oh, remarkable. Yeah, I'm in LA, so we see all of his stuff: Tesla, SpaceX, all these things. He's actually digging a tunnel under Los Angeles right now, trying to make a privatized tunnel system. Pretty remarkable.
Yeah, he's actually, he contributed a lot to our school and so on in the past. But he hates South Africa. I don't think he will ever come back.
That's a shame.
But I don't blame him for it.
Do you feel like there's a brain drain that could happen or is happening?
I don't think so. I wouldn't say it's the smart people only the smart people that are leaving. I think there's a lot of them that stayed here. If you look at the number of medical doctors per 100,000 people in our population, it's not a lot. But if you take the amount of medical doctors just in the Afrikaner Boer people, it's actually the highest in the world, for example. And our engineers, we also have a lot of engineers and so on. That's the most common. It's the most common profession for a person of Afrikaner descent. So it's actually, I wouldn't say it's a brain drain.
Well, that's good. So what else can we cover? I mean, there was another guy that I actually saw a clip of, a guy by the name of Shivambu. He was like putting his hand on a journalist today, all in red. Do you feel like the journalists are trying to get the information out, or is there an attempt to curtail or keep the journalists from talking about current conditions in South Africa?
No, of course there is. I mean, the EFF is notorious for it. They sing these songs to kill the Boer and so on. Then this Floyd Shavambu attacked the journalist there for no reason. I actually I think you saw it on my Twitter feed because I was the one posting about it.
Okay,
and also, I also posted a video on my Twitter feed of a video where some of these ANC people are fighting within government, and the one broke a jug of water over the other one. So I wouldn't say it's just against the journalists. I mean, brawling is quite a commonplace in Parliament in South Africa. You can Google it and you can get not millions, but thousands of pictures of it.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. I mean, the whole notion of post-apartheid South Africa, what do they call it? A rainbow
nation.
Rainbow nation, that's right. And
that's also...
Sorry.
Yeah?
Continue.
That's also actually a term that was invented by Open Society Foundation in South Africa. So that's quite something to know.
Well, maybe you can talk about Soros and the Open Society and its effect upon South Africa.
I think South Africa was during apartheid was probably the main focus of the Open Society Foundation. Their offices in South Africa are one of the biggest offices in the world until today still, and they are very, very, very active here. And during apartheid, him and his cronies and his employees and so on were very active here. Just look at the Rivonia trials. You've got Dennis Goldberg, you've got Helen Suzman, you've got Joe Slovo, you've got Ronnie Casirales, you've got all these people that were connected to him, that were working actually in that were actually working for the revolution. They never got their hands dirty themselves. They got their black pawns to do it for them, but they just pushed the money and the propaganda.
Interesting. Slovo was a communist too, right?
Yeah, all these people that I named were communists.
And so what do you think the Open Society Foundation, its goal was to just end apartheid or really change the character of the country?
I think it's more cultural. They wanted to change the character of the country because there was a lot of opposition in the 60s to worldwide to this whole concept of multiculturalism and multiracialism. The big majority of people were against it worldwide, and nowadays the majority of people are for it worldwide. And I think South Africa played a major part in that change of world culture, because then they showed the world, look here, South Africa was fine, they the rainbow nation now. But all they spread about South Africa all these years were lies, because they were all saying how good it was going here, and especially Open Society Foundation and Soros, they were spreading all these lies, but actually it never went well in South Africa after apartheid ended.
Interesting.
And also the other thing is the gold and the mineral and the minerals in South Africa were all taken over by Soros and his cronies.
So ultimately they had a cultural change, but then when, I suppose when apartheid ended, those kind of like what happened in Russia, these assets are open for purchase. Would you agree with that?
I'm sorry? Well,
like in Russia, when they had the end of the Soviet Union, international capitalists came in and bought up a lot of their assets. They wanted the oil assets or something like that. And I thought, did something like that happen with international finance coming in, perhaps maybe Soros, and purchasing?
Yeah, it was mostly him and his communist buddies that got all the spoils. I mean, Dennis Goldberg, who was in South Africa all these years, the leader of the South African Communist Party, he became a billionaire, a dollar billionaire, after apartheid ended, because of all the mines that he got. And also a guy named Nicky Oppenheimer, you can Google him. He got ties to these people, and he also became a billionaire. I think his net worth is more than or close to $20 billion at this moment. He got it out of diamonds.
So was Oppenheimer part of that whole De Beers complex? That whole company?
Yes. He got the main shares in De Beers. He was the majority owner, but then later he sold it and moved out.
Gotcha. So people are selling some of their assets and moving out of the country. Is that true?
Yeah, most of these communists or these globalists, I would rather call them, that's a better term, that were fighting against apartheid, most of them left the country.
Remarkable. So I find that odd that they would want to be involved in the ending of this governmental system and then leave. It seems odd to me. They just got
look at most of them. You moved to the UK.
Interesting. So they took their money and ran.
Yeah, they actually didn't take their money. They made their money and then ran.
Interesting. So maybe what you can do is kind of inform people where they can get in touch with you, talk about your social media, and maybe give some advice for people to kind of get the real information about what's happening in South Africa.
Well, on Twitter, I usually post all the stories that I have on South Africa. So I'll put my Twitter handle into the chat. People can follow me there.
I'll put it in the show notes too. I'll put it in the show notes. So your name is Willem Petzer.
Yeah. But my Twitter handle is just like @Willem, but it's spelled the Dutch way and just PET as I put it into the chat right now.
Okay, cool. And then what else? What other areas are worth checking out for people who aren't in South Africa? What are the reporting do you recommend?
I wouldn't recommend mainstream reporting from South Africa because they are very slow and they're very biased. Like most of the time, I have these stories 2 or 3 days before the media had them, and then I post them. But I would also recommend them if they want to follow the news in South Africa quite closely. They should follow this guy called Ian Cameron.
E.M. Cameron. Is that what you said? E.M. or
Ian Cameron.
I-A-N Cameron.
Exactly. I'll quickly go onto Twitter right now and go get his handle, and I'll also post that into the group. He's very involved in the whole farm murder thing. He's head of the security at AfriForum, so he usually has these information first. There we go. It's @IanCameron23.
Yeah. I'll put all that stuff in the show notes. And anything else? Any other person?
I think they should follow AfriForum too. And
AFRI Forum, FORUM.
Yes, exactly.
So Ian Cameron, AfriForum, cover you.
Yeah, exactly. So they do the most of the things. Yeah, the thing is, there's not much media in South Africa that's on the internet available yet because we're a little bit behind. But as I said, some of these guys like myself and Ian and them are very active on Twitter, posting the stories and so on.
Gotcha. Oh, another guy that I was following was Rational Gent. Have you heard of Rational Gent?
Yeah, he's actually a friend of mine in real life.
Okay, gotcha. So I think that's how I actually came across you, was through him.
Yeah.
So what do you think the effect of all of these, I mean, if you look at Ian Cameron stuff, these marches and things like that, are they falling on deaf ears or?
They are definitely falling on deaf ears here in South Africa. The government and so on doesn't give a damn what they say, especially AfriForum and these people. But in the international community, they are raising a lot of awareness because it's not just the government that sees it. I think like the Australian newspapers at this moment are reporting more stuff on South Africa than the actual local newspapers do.
Wow, that's remarkable. Yeah, they said, I mean, I've heard that there was somebody in their parliament who was going to table a emergency measure if people wanted to flee South Africa or something like that. So they seem to be.
Yeah, they're quite on it.
Yeah, that's good. That's in the States. I don't think so. I don't think too many people.
Not yet.
Yeah.
But people are starting to I don't know if you know Ann Coulter.
Yes.
That's how you say it.
Coulter, Ann Coulter. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she started following me on Twitter and she started retweeting my stuff and trying to find out more. And I've seen her tweet a lot to President Donald Trump that he should look into the situation. So that's quite a big thing in the States. I think she's got quite a big following and a fan base. So I think
I would agree with that, definitely. So yeah, that's a good person to be in contact with for sure. So
Yeah, I'm actually very happy that she started following me and retweeting me, because now my message is going out a lot more to a lot more people.
Well, that's good. This will go out. This will probably be seen tens of thousands of people, so that's good. But yeah, Ian Cameron 23 on Twitter, and then Afroforum is AFRIFORUM, all one word. So you can, people can find that.
I'll quickly put their handle is actually the exact same as their name, but I'll quickly put that into the chat on YouTube as well.
Okay, sounds good. And anything else before we wrap this up you'd like to tell the audience?
No, I think we basically covered a very brief but good history and what's going on in South Africa and so on. So I think we basically covered everything. We covered the gun control issue. We've covered the fall murders going on. We've covered the history. I don't know. Is there anything else that you think I should say?
Well, I was just more curious about how things are going to go in the future. I think we kind of covered that. But, if you want to get into specifics of, what's going on politically there or anything else, I'd be more than happy to have you back on the show, or you could do a show with Ed Opperman, or I can get your name out there. I'll see if anybody else is. I actually know a couple other broadcasters who might be interested in talking to you if you're up for that.
Yeah, I'll always be up if I can find the time. I'm really trying to get the message out there. The problem with the future is just that we don't know.
Well, I wish you well. I wish all the people of South Africa well, and I hope some of these problems can be resolved. But I think
thanks,
I think one of this is like human history, gun control. People don't like the guns here. There's huge problems going on in the States with guns and people shooting in schools. But if you control,
you can see the parallels between South Africa and the States. Like exactly what happened here is they are trying to let happen in the States.
Yeah, it's a shame. Willem Petzer, Petzer. Your Twitter handle is, let me find that. Willem Pet, WILLEMPET on Twitter. I would suggest people go and follow him, get some excellent information, and he also posts very current videos. So, Willem, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Have a good evening.